Today we're reading references out of As Bill Sees It related to will. This is part 2, beginning on page 109. Freedom through acceptance. We admitted we couldn't lick alcohol with our own remaining resources, and so we accepted the further fact that dependence upon a higher power, if only our AA group could do this hitherto impossible job. The moment we were able to accept these facts fully, our release from the alcohol compulsion had begun. For most of us, this pair of acceptances had required a lot of exertion to achieve. Our whole treasured philosophy of self-sufficiency had to be cast aside. This had not been done with sure willpower. It came instead as a result of developing the willingness to accept these new facts of living. We neither ran nor fought, but accept we did, and then we began to be free. 122. Willingness is the key. No matter how much one wishes to try, exactly how can he turn his own will and his own life over to the care of whatever God he thinks there is? A beginning, even the smallest, is all that is needed. Once we have placed the key of willingness in the lock and have the door ever so slightly open, we find that we can always open it still more. Though self-will may slam it shut again, as it frequently does, it will always respond the moment we again pick up the key of willingness. 124. Freedom to choose. Looking back, we see that our freedom to choose badly was not, after all, a very real freedom. When we chose because we must, this was not a free choice either, but it got us started in the right direction. When we choose because we ought to, we were really doing better. This time, we were earning some freedom, making ourselves ready for more. But when, now and then, we could gladly make right choices without rebellion, hold out our conflict, then we had our first view of what perfect freedom under God's will could be like. 139. Basis of all humility. For just so long as we were convinced that we could live exclusively by our own individual strength and intelligence, for just that long was a working faith in a higher power impossible. This was true even when we believed that God existed. We could actually have earnest religious beliefs which remained barren because we were still trying to play God ourselves. As long as we placed self-reliance first, a genuine reliance upon a higher power was out of the question. That basic ingredient of all humility, a desire to seek and do God's will, was missing. 170. Whose will? We have all seen AAs ask with much earnestness and faith for God's explicit guidance on matters ranging all the way from a shattering domestic or financial crisis to a minor personal fault like tardiness. A man who tries to run his life rightly by this kind of prayer, by this self-serving demand of God for replies, is a particularly disconcerting individual. To any questioning or criticism of his actions, he instantly proffers his reliance upon prayer for guidance in all matters great and small. He may have forgotten the possibility that his own wishful thinking and the human tendency to rationalize have distorted this so-called guidance. With the best of intentions, he tends to force his will into all sorts of situations and problems with the comfortable assurance that he's acting under God's specific direction. 210, out of bondage. At step 3, many of us said to our Maker, as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that my transcendence over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready. Then we could commence to abandon ourselves utterly to him. 225. The answer in the mirror. While drinking, we were certain that our intelligence, backed by willpower, could rightly control our inner lives and guarantee us success in the world around us. This brave philosophy, wherein each man played God, sounded good in the speaking, but it still had to meet the acid test. How well did it actually work? One good look in the mirror was answer enough. My spiritual awakening was electrically sudden and absolutely convincing. At once, I became a part, if only a tiny part, of a cosmos that was ruled by justice and love in the person of God. No matter what had been the consequences of my own willfulness and ignorance, or those of my fellow travelers on earth, this was still the truth. Such was the new and positive assurance, and this has never left me. 232. The value of human will. Many newcomers, having experienced little but constant deflation, feel a growing conviction the human will is of no value whatever. They have become persuaded, sometimes rightly so, that many problems besides alcohol will not yield to a headlong assault powered only by the individual's will. However, there are certain things which the individual alone can do. All by himself, and in the light of his own circumstances, he needs to develop the quality of willingness. When he acquires willingness, he is the only one who can make the decision to exert himself along spiritual lines. Trying to do this is actually an act of his own will. It is the right use of this facility. Indeed, all of AA's 12 steps require our sustained and personal exertion to conform to their principles, and so we trust to God's will. 245. Single-handed combat. Few indeed are those who, assisted by the tyrant alcohol, have ever won through in single-handed combat. It is a statistical fact that alcoholics almost never recover on their personal resources alone. Way up toward Point Barrow in Alaska, a couple of prospectors got themselves in a cabin in a case of scotch. The weather turned bitter, 50 below. They got so drunk they let the fire go out. Barely escaping death by freezing, one of them woke up in time to rekindle the fire. He was prowling around outside for fuel, and he looked into an empty oil drum filled with frozen water. Down in the ice cake, he saw a reddish yellow object. He thought it out. It was seen to be an AA book. One of the pair read the book and sobered up. Legend has it that he became the founder of one of our farthest north groups.